Hello, I'm Gaurang Shukla, third year BTech CSE student from Bennett University, and my topic for today's seminar is optical mouse. That doesn't really need an introduction. Mouse is one of the most commonly used electronic device. Basically, everyone at this time who has used a PC in their lives have interacted with a mouse. However, you will be surprised to know that the invention of mouse was not as early as invention of computer and how long it took mice to become a part of everyday life. Given that people naturally point at things usually before they speak, it is surprising that it took so long for a good pointing device to develop. Although originally conceived in 1960s, it took quite some time for mice to become mainstream. In the beginning, there was no need to point because computers used crude interfaces like teletype machines or punch cards for data entry before arrow keys were found on most terminals. Full-screen editors were the first things to take real advantage of cursor keys as they offer humans the first good way to point. Now let's talk about the history of the optical mouse. The optical mouse was invented in 1980. The first two optical mice, first demonstrated by two independent investors in December 1980, had different basic designs. Developed by MIT's Steve Kirsch and Mouse System Corporation, employed an infrared LED and a four-quadrant infrared sensor to identify grid lines printed on a specific metallic surface with infrared absorbing ink. The speed and direction over the grid were estimated using predictive algorithms in the mouse CPU. This design had a major drawback that it would not work correctly when the pad was rotated as it used an XY coordinate system embedded in the pad and not in the mouse itself. The other version, designed by Xerox's Richard F. Leon, monitored the motion of light dots in a dark field of printed paper or a comparable mouse pad using a 16-pixel visible light image sensor with integrated motion detection on a 5 micrometer MOS integrated circuit chip. It used XY coordinate system of the mouse body as mechanical mice do and therefore did not suffer with the same problem as the Steve Kirsch model. Now coming to the modern times. The first commercially available modern optical computer mice were the Microsoft IntelliMouse with IntelliEye and the IntelliMouse Explorer. This technology was developed by Hewlett-Packard. It worked on almost any surface and represented a welcome improvement over mechanical mouse. Now let's discuss the basics of optical mouse. An optical mouse is a device used to measure the motion and acceleration of the pointer. It is an advanced computer pointing device that uses a light emitting diode or an LED, an optical sensor, and a digital signal processing unit in place of traditional mouse ball and electromechanical transducer. Movement is detected by sensing changes in reflected light rather than by interpreting the motion of a rolling sphere. However, it should also be noticed that optics are utilized in mechanical mice as well. Alternatively referred to as the ball mouse, the optical mechanical or optomechanical mouse consists of a ball that rolls one of the two wheels inside the mouse. Each wheel contains a circle of holes or notches, allowing an LED light to shine through and be detected by a sensor. As the wheel spins, these lights represent an X or Y axis for the mouse pointer on your screen. This mouse is more accurate than a mechanical mouse that uses only wheels and rollers. However, it is not as good as an optical mouse. Now coming back to the topic of optical mouse. It should be noted that optical mouse has another subtype known as laser mouse. They both share the same working principle. Let's see some key differences between the two. Optical mouse have multiple type of LEDs, right, like red, green or blue. However, laser mouse only has an infrared LED. Infrared LEDs give laser mice some advantages over optical mice, like having high sensitivity and ability to operate on any surface, unlike optical mice that are sensitive towards the surface. Laser mouse were first invented for gaming as they are highly sensitive, and that's why they generally have 12 programmable buttons. Now let's talk about the components of an optical mouse. So there are six main components that you will see in every optical mouse. Number one is LED source, number two is a lens, number three is a mounted camera, a scroll mechanism, micro switches, and a USB. Before getting in details for each component, let's first understand the working principle of the mouse. Sources with photodetectors replace the ball and coating wheels in an optical mouse. Two little plastic lenses refract the light rays emitted by the light source. A mirror then detects the concentrated beams to a perpendicular photodetector. Generally, a reflector surface is used to move the mouse. There are small horizontal and vertical grid lines on this surface. Light rays are then absorbed by the grid lines as the mouse moves, and photodetectors detect changes in the light intensity. The electronics in this mouse convert these pulses into signals for the computer. The top of an optical mouse has one or more switches, while the bottom surface has a light emitting diode or an LED. Light from the LED is reflected by the surface when the mouse is moved. The reflected light is then directed towards a tracking sensor, which is a metal oxide semiconductor sensor. The final phase, a digital signal processor or DSP, analyzes each reflected picture sent by the sensor. The DSP analyzes the photo for patterns and determines how they have changed since the previous image. The DSP calculates how far the mouse has traveled based on patterns changing over time in a series of photos. After that, it transmits the computer the corresponding coordinates. Based on these coordinates provided by the mouse, the computer moves the cursor on the screen. Now let's understand each component in details. First is the LED and lens. The LED at the bottom of the optical mouse is a vital component in the entire operation of this computer mouse. It shines whenever the mouse is disturbed from its initial position. It also turns on with every click of the buttons on left or either the right. Most notably, this is always a red LED. It can also be an infrared for a laser mouse as discussed previously. So the light from the LED falls on the desk and reflects in all directions. A part of this reflected light is collected by a lens and is directed towards a sensor. Second comes the optical mouse sensors. An optical mouse might use an image sensor having an 18 into 18 pixel array of a monochromatic pixels. The sensors take pictures quickly, like 1500 pictures per second. The sensor then sends the image for processing. This processing is done by an optical navigation engine. The optical navigation engine then interprets the movement of the mouse based on the information it receives from the sensor. It collects all the images and carefully computes all the changes between different images. It is the most important optical mouse component. It is also regarded as the brain of the optical mouse. The fourth component is the scroll wheel. The scroll wheel at the front is directly mounted on a switch mechanism. This switching mechanism determines both how much the scroll wheel is rotated and if it is pressed or not. The switching mechanism employed is actually different in case of different manufacturers. Most of the optical mouse use potentiometers similar to the volume control knobs or rotary switches or optical encoders. Then comes the click mechanism. The microswitches present under both the buttons detect any activity or tapping over these buttons. The white part is meant to generate the click effect. When a button is clicked, a flexible metal plate is pressed which shorts the 2 points of circuits that detects a mouse click. Finally, in wired computer mice, the USB cable transfers information in digital form to and from the computer. Binary information about clicks and motion of the mouse pointer to the computer's main processor and bring back power to the optical mouse. In case of wireless mouse, this part is replaced by an antenna which transmits binary information in form of electromagnetic waves which are received by the USB connector. Now towards the conclusion and future. So the aim of this session was to shed some light on an optical mouse, which is a device that almost everyone who has interacted with a computer has used in their life. As for its future, the technology is improving day by day. We see big companies like Razer Blade and HP launching highly precise and sensitive optical mice regularly. These are heavily utilized in the field of gaming and graphic designing. Mouse has also made interacting with computers very easy and intuitive for the common man. With this, I'd like to end today's session. Thank you.